Hello, everyone, and welcome to chapter 9 of the compendium. This chapter is called Good Feelings, and it covers the years 1817 to 1829, which are the presidential administrations of James Monroe and John Quincy Adams. And so this is the ninth of 26 chapters. It is the first chapter of the Antebellum era, and this particular chapter is divided into two sections. The first is called Spirit of Nationality from 1817 to 1825. This is the James Monroe administration. And then the next section is the American system, which is John Quincy Adams. This today's live stream is going to be short because I don't have too much information on this particular chapter. So if you guys know of any primary source documents or events that you think I should add, let me know in the description of this live stream or in the comments. And yeah, let's get right into it. So the Spirit of Nationality from 1817 to 1825 is the collapse of the Federalist Party fostered a temporary sense of political unity and national purpose. Post-war economic growth and internal improvements expanded markets and infrastructure, though the Panic of 1819 exposed the fragility of American finance and deepened regional resentment. Sectional tensions over slavery erupted with the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which preserved the Union by balancing free and slave states while revealing the issue's explosive future. In foreign affairs, the Monroe Doctrine asserted American opposition to European intervention in the Western Hemisphere, signaling a bold claim of hemispheric leadership. By the end of Monroe's administration, nationalism masked unresolved divisions as unity rested less on consensus than on the postponement of conflict. That's a little description of this section that I wrote. And so we have Monroe's first inauguration. This is a link to his inaugural address on March 4th, 1817. You have the Rush-Bagot Pact, Monroe's tour of the northeastern states, which he did to help unite the nation in the states that suffered the most from the War of 1812. During the War of 1812 and during the last chapter, you had a couple states in New England establish a conference in order to present a list of grievances to the federal government. And so the next couple of presidents will be going to the Northeast to try to placate the Northeasterners who suffered the most. We have the start of the First Seminole War, which begins by the natives, the Seminoles, hiding fugitive slaves in Florida. You have Monroe's 1817 State of the Union, the admission of Mississippi as, I believe, the 19th state, repeal of internal duties. So these duties were passed under the Washington and Adams administration, and some of those duties were repealed by Thomas Jefferson and then James Madison, and now under James Monroe. That process of decreasing the duties, which are tariffs, continues. Monroe's message to Congress on the occupation of Amelia Island. General Jackson executes 2 British citizens for supporting the Seminoles during the First Seminole War. And then General Jackson will invade Pensacola in Spanish-held Florida. Monroe will tour the South when it is prematurely ended when Monroe got a message of General Jackson's seizure of Pensacola. Connecticut finally makes its own state constitution of 1818. Prior to this, Connecticut was using its royal charter, the colonial charter, as its de facto state constitution, which is kind of interesting. And another state will be doing the same, Rhode Island. Rhode Island won't make their own state constitution until 1845 or 48. We'll get to that when we get to that. Let's see. Signing of the Anglo-American Convention. Monroe's 1818 State of the Union. Admission of Illinois. You have the financial panic of 1819. This is the first widespread financial crisis in the United States. James Talmadge Jr. proposes restricting slavery in Missouri. 2 amendments to a Missouri statehood bill that catalyzed a debate on slavery. One amendment would restrict further slavery in Missouri, and the other would set a timeline for freeing enslaved persons already in a territory. So Talmadge is a abolitionist, very early abolitionist, and he will propose that Missouri be a free state, and any slaves who are already in Missouri will be freed. The Spanish and the the Spanish and the Americans will sign a treaty which will cede Florida to the United States. You have the Enabling Act of Alabama, so you have a ton of states that are being created during this time. Territorial Government of Arkansas. Steerage Act of 1819. Temporary Territorial Government of Florida. So Florida is now being prepared to become a state. Civilizing Indian Tribes Act. This is one of the first acts which will take Indian children away from their families and force them into schools where they would be taught English and wear American clothes and basically strip the natives of their culture. An act to enforce the abolition of importing slaves. So in 1808, during the Thomas Jefferson administration, you have the banning of importing slaves. Of course, you need to enforce that because there is the black market, and the United States will, this act will give Congress more authority when it comes to enforcing the ban on importation of slaves. You have a very important Supreme Court decision, McCulloch v. Maryland, and so I encourage you guys to watch this video by Mr. Beat. We have all of his Supreme Court briefs in our compendium, so you can watch it straight from the timeline. Yeah, Monroe has another tour where he goes around talking to southern states and western states. Constitution of Alabama, 1819. 2 speeches on the Missouri Bill by Rufus King. Rufus King is one of our founders. Monroe's 1819 State of the Union Address. Admission of the state of Alabama. Maine. Now you have the Compromise of 1820. Constitution of Maine, 1820. Monroe's message to Congress about expelling natives from Georgia. And so a lot of people blame Andrew Jackson for the Trail of Tears, although the Trail of Tears was going to happen anyway. There was presidents like James Monroe and then John Quincy Adams. We'll talk about expelling Native Americans from Georgia. And we'll get into the actual Trail of Tears in the next chapter, where we talk about the Jackson administration. We have this letter from Thomas Jefferson reacting to the Missouri Compromise of 1820. And in this letter, he talks about how he fears that you can't just free slaves because all of the horrible things that Americans, the masters, were doing to the slaves will um, try to get vengeance on the masters and also uh, just the white people in general. So there really can't, according to Thomas Jefferson, there cannot be this um, peaceful coexistence between white and former slaves. And then he also feared that the issue of slavery, will ruin the republic if it's not resolved. And so during this time period, the antebellum period, from 1817 all the way up to 1848, 49, is the compromise era. That's the antebellum era, where this compromise, really starting in 1820, the system of compromise will be led by congressional leaders like John C. Calhoun, Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, and they will maintain this compromise system all the way up until around 1848, 49, with the aftermath of the Mexican-American War. And we'll be getting more into that um, in a couple of days when we cover that chapter. Let's see, Tenure of Office Act. Here's a census video by Jeffrey the Librarian. So I encourage you guys to check out his website and watch this video if you're just interested in learning about what the census was back in 1820. And here's another video by Mr. Beat. This is the election of Monroe. Monroe will win over John Quincy Adams. Monroe's 1820 State of the Union Address. First act to relieve land purchasers. This is during the Panic of 1819. Admission of Missouri. Military Establishment Act of 1821. An act to enforce the Adams-Onis Treaty. Monroe's second inaugural. His 1821 State of the Union Address. Monroe's message to Congress recognizing independent nations in Central and South America. This will be leading to eventual conflict with countries like Spain. This is part of the Monroe Doctrine, which is to kick out any European influence out of Spain, or out of the New World, including Spain. Let's see, Territorial Government of Florida. Second act to relieve land purchasers. Vetoes Cumberland Road Appropriations Bill. So during this time, you have this debate in Congress about whether or not the federal government should invest in the nation's infrastructure. Like, at this time, building roads, building canals for boats, steamboats that are now becoming popular. Whether or not the federal government should invest in these infrastructure projects is very much up for debate. The Southern Democrats are against this for the most part because they believe that because of the higher population in the North, and that the North had had more control over finance and money and commerce, that most of the infrastructure projects will be focused on the North, which will improve the North without improving the South. And so, whether or not this is an accurate argument is kind of confiscated because the North will invest in their own infrastructure, as you'll see pretty soon. And so the North is already building its own infrastructure, and they will get ahead commercially than the South. You also have geographic and population differences between the two sections of the country, where it makes more sense for the North to have more infrastructure. They have a higher population. Sure. And so that's part of the debate going on during this time. Proclamation of the treaty with France. Again, this is following the Napoleonic Wars for France and Europe, and then the War of 1812, which ends pretty much around the same time in 1815. And so there's still a lot of animosity between the Americans and the English and the French. Territorial Government of Florida, 1823 State of the Union. Gibbons v. Ogden is another pretty famous Supreme Court decision where the monopoly of the steamboat in New York was challenged. And so I encourage you guys to watch this video by Mr. Beat about this Supreme Court decision. Monroe's message to Congress on expelling natives from Georgia. So Georgia will be... I don't know why the president's really focused on Georgia in particular. The Seminole War is going on, so that might explain it. And the Russo-American Treaty of 1824, General Survey Act, Tariff Act of 1824, Lafayette's farewell tour. Lafayette was a French commander during the American Revolution, and he is very famous in America during this time. You have the four-way election where John Quincy Adams wins, and that's because Henry Clay will drop out of the race and convince his delegates to vote for John Quincy Adams, despite Andrew Jackson winning the popular vote. And so Andrew Jackson, following this, will branch off and form the Democratic Party. Monroe's 1824 State of the Union, the Columbian Observer's Letter of the Corrupt Bargain. So here's a primary source of this corrupt bargain between Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams, because Henry Clay would join John Quincy Adams' cabinet, and so a lot of people were speculating that there was a corrupt bargain, which is probably true. So I don't know too much about the authenticity of these claims, but from what we have, and given the results of the election and how Henry Clay joined John Quincy Adams in his cabinet, I think that makes more sense than other corrupt bargains throughout American history that people speculated with very little, really no evidence at all, and no good arguments for it, like the compromise or the corrupted bargain of 1877, which resolved the 1876 election, which I don't think that bargain ever happened. So, because there's literally no evidence for it, but that's further down the line in the compendium. That's during the Reconstruction era. And so we have Monroe's message to Congress about exterminating Indians. Yikes. Henry Clay responds to the letter of the corrupt bargain. And then the House counts John Quincy Adams with the most states, winning him the presidency. We have a treaty with the Creek Indians in Georgia. And then the very last document we have for James Monroe is Monroe's message about the treaty with the Creek. Presidents didn't give farewell addresses at this time, by the way. Let's see. The American system, this is the John Quincy Adams administration. We don't have that much on this timeline. So I'm going to read the description. John Quincy Adams assumed the presidency under the cloud of the disputed election of 1824, as charges of a corrupt bargain undermined his legitimacy from the outset. Adams championed Henry Clay's American system, advocating federal investment in internal improvements, a national university, scientific advancement, and protective tariffs to bind the nation together economically and culturally. Despite a bold nationalist vision, Adams faced relentless opposition from Jacksonian allies in Congress who blocked most of his initiatives and framed them as unconstitutional overreach. Foreign policy successes, including improved relations in the Americas and commercial treaties, were overshadowed by domestic paralysis and partisan warfare. By 1829, Adams' failure was less of ideas than of politics, as democratic populism displaced elite nationalism and set the stage for a profound transformation of American governance with the Jacksonian Age. So you have John Quincy Adams' inaugural address, which was given on March 4th, 1825. Treaty with the Creek is ratified. JQA appoints Henry Clay as Secretary of State. Here is the Erie Canal being completed all the way back in 1825. Now, this is a New York State paid project. This was not paid for by the federal government, but this project helped convince the federal government and convince other states to support national infrastructure projects like this. So all of the infrastructure projects, all of that, that movement to have and build infrastructure is, you can thank the Erie Canal for popularizing the infrastructure project initiative. You have John Quincy Adams' 1825 State of the Union. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both die on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. That's July 4th, 1826. So it's kind of eerie that those two men who were on the Committee of Five to write the Declaration of Independence will die on the same day. And I think John Adams, his last words were Jefferson lives or something like that, not knowing that Jefferson had died a couple hours before he will die. So, again, kind of eerie. John Quincy Adams' 1826 State of the Union Address. His message about the rights of the Creeks. Proclamation on closing ports to British trading. John Quincy Adams' 1827 State of the Union Address. You have the Tariff of Abominations, which gets passed in 1828, and this will cause the nullification crisis, particularly in South Carolina during the Jackson administration. And then you have the election of Andrew Jackson. He wins over John Quincy Adams in December of 1828. South Carolina Exposition and Protest, written by John C. Calhoun. Excuse me. And this will be a protest of the Tariff of Abominations. And then the very last document that we have on this chapter is John Quincy Adams' 1828 State of the Union Address. Now, I have not, as you can see, and how quickly I went through this chapter. Usually it takes me hours to get through a chapter. It's only been less than 25 minutes. And so there's a ton more history for me to add to this chapter. If you guys know of any primary source documents or major events that you think I should add, just let me know in the comments and I'll look through as many as I can. And yeah, so that's this chapter. Pretty short chapter, very short chapter, at least for now, until we develop it out further. And if you're interested in what we do, if you think that this is a good resource, you can donate. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're making online resources like this, where people can find primary source documents and events throughout history in a more engaging and visually, I guess the term is visually engaging or interactive timeline So it teaches history chronologically, which I think that's how history should be taught, along with overlapping themes to show how one theme can influence another theme, and also relying mostly on primary sources for all of the descriptions and all of the events as well. And so, yeah, if you think that what we're doing is good, if you think that you want us to expand upon what we've already done, then please donate. All donations are tax deductible, and so you can get that. And yeah, just let me know what you guys think, and check out the website and all the chapters. The website is www.tarpeia.us. Tarpeia is spelled TARPEIA.us. And I hope to hear some feedback from you guys. So thank you, and have a nice day.